16-year-old girl walked into a county clerk's office with 3 documents and a brown notebook, and walked out owning a $3,400 a month agreement that a $34 million developer couldn't break. How does a girl who was handed a strip of dirt as a joke end up holding the only key to a project worth more than some small towns? Harrison Wolf's lawyer called 4 times before anyone picked up. The 4th call went to a paralegal named Dennis, who had been awake since 5 a.m. because the project was frozen. The crew was sitting idle at $6,200 a day, and nobody at the firm could explain how a 12-foot strip of land, 12 feet, was blocking a $34 million development in Caldwell County. Dennis had the file open on his desk. He had the title search. He had the survey. He had 400 pages of permits and approvals stamped by the county planning office. None of it mattered, because all 400 pages assumed access through a parcel that did not belong to Harrison Wolf. It belonged to a 16-year-old named Nora Vass. Dennis called the number in the file. It rang twice. A girl answered. She did not sound surprised. 3 years earlier, the Caldwell County tax auction ran on the 3rd Saturday of August. The gymnasium at the old county fairgrounds smelled like cleaning solution and coffee that had been sitting too long. 6 folding tables. A card table at the front with a metal coffee pot and a stack of paper cups. Dwight, the county clerk, reading lot numbers into a microphone that wasn't quite loud enough. 12 people in folding chairs. 4 of them locals who came every year for something to do. Victor Vass sat in the 4th row with his daughter, Nora. Nora was 13. She had a spiral notebook and a mechanical pencil. She had been to the auction once before, when she was 11, and she had spent that whole morning writing down lot numbers and their descriptions without knowing why. This year she knew why. She had spent the last 6 months in the county library, reading zoning records from the 1950s that nobody else had touched. She had found something. She had not told anyone what it was. Not yet. Harrison Wolf sat in the front row. He had a lawyer with him, a man named Clive in a gray suit holding a leather portfolio. Harrison had already bought the 40 acres surrounding the parcel that was about to come up. He had paid $1.2 million for those 40 acres over the past 8 months, using 3 different LLCs so the county wouldn't notice the assembly happening. He was good at that. Lot 44 came up at 11:14 a.m. Dwight read the description flat and fast. A corridor parcel, 12 feet wide, half a mile long. Back taxes owed, $47. Assessed value, $310. Harrison leaned to Clive and said something Nora couldn't hear. Clive smiled. Harrison turned around in his chair, looked at the back rows, and pointed at Nora with a loose wave of his hand. "Give it to the kid." He said it loud enough for the 4 locals to hear. One of them laughed. Dwight looked up from his notes, looked at Harrison, looked at Nora, and waited. Harrison handed the signed paddle card to a county worker. The worker walked it to the back row and set it on the arm of Nora's chair. Nobody objected. Dwight read the transfer. Lot 44 to Nora Vass. A second person laughed this time. Harrison was already looking at his phone. Victor looked at his daughter. His face asked a question. Nora did not react to the laughter. She did not look at Harrison. She wrote the lot number in her notebook, the dimensions, the legal description, and the $47 figure. She wrote the date in the margin. She took the receipt Dwight's assistant handed her. A small white slip, folded it once, and put it in the inside pocket of her jacket. She felt the paper sit flat against her ribs. Harrison Wolf did not look back. He had just signed over the one piece of land that his entire development needed to function, and he had done it as a joke because he was certain Nora Vass was too young to matter. He was wrong about that. The 4 locals were still talking when the auction moved to Lot 45. Victor leaned toward Nora and kept his voice low. He asked, "What do you need $47 back taxes land for?" Nora said, "Access." Victor did not fully understand what that meant. But he looked at her face, calm, focused, a 13-year-old who had not blinked when a room laughed at her, and he did not ask again. Nora opened her notebook to the next clean page. She drew a rough rectangle. She labeled it 40 acres. Along the bottom edge, she drew a thin line, 12 feet wide, running half a mile east to west. She circled the thin line. Then she wrote 4 words beside it. She did not show Victor what the words said. She closed the notebook, tucked it into her bag, and drank the rest of a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold. Harrison Wolfe walked out of the gymnasium at 11:31 a.m., laughing about something Clive had said. Nora sat in the folding chair until almost everyone else had left. She knew something nobody else in that room knew, and she was not in a hurry. Every so often, a person walks into a room and gets laughed at, and that laugh turns out to be the most expensive sound the other person ever made. Hit subscribe and stay with this story, because what's coming will make you rethink everything you know about who holds the power in a deal. A single manila folder sat on the table in the Caldwell County Public Library reading room, and it was thicker than it had any right to be. The label on the tab read, Road Expansion Records, 1954 to 1962. Archived. Nora had found it 4 months before the auction. She had been looking for something else entirely, a history project on county infrastructure, when a librarian named Mrs. Trout pointed her toward the planning archive shelf and said nobody had pulled those folders in at least 6 years based on the dust. Nora pulled 3 of them. She spread the contents across a wooden table near the back window and started reading. Most of it was routine. Budget proposals. Meeting minutes. A letter about road grading costs in 1957 that went on for 7 pages. Nora read everything. That was how she worked. She did not skim. She followed each page to the end and then turned to the next one, and she kept a running list in her notebook of anything that seemed like it might connect to something else. On page 211 of the 3rd folder, she found it. Caldwell County Road Expansion Initiative, 1956. Access Corridor Network. A map, hand-drawn, photocopied until it was pale and slightly blurry at the edges. A grid of dashed lines running through the eastern quarter of the county, thin strips, 12 feet wide, platted as permanent access corridors to allow the county to build secondary roads through private land without buying full parcels. The project had been canceled in 1959. Nora read that line twice. Canceled. She kept going. The next page was a county commission resolution from February 1960, a discussion about formally dissolving the corridor designations. The resolution had been proposed. There was a motion. There was a second. There was no vote recorded. Nora turned the page. The next document was a budget report from March 1960. The corridor dissolution was not mentioned. She checked the next folder. Nothing. She went to the County Archive Index and looked up the 1960 Commission minutes. The resolution to dissolve was listed as tabled for review. There was no record it had ever come back to the floor. She sat with that for a long time. If the resolution was never voted on, the corridors were never legally dissolved. The plat filing from 1956, instrument number 1956, CR 0041, was still alive on the books. The corridors still existed as recorded legal instruments. She wrote the instrument number in her notebook and underlined it twice. That evening, at the kitchen table, the kettle on the stove behind her, Nora spread her notes next to a county map she had photocopied at the library. Her mother, Elena, came in from the hallway, saw the papers and sat down across from her. Elena looked at the map. She looked at Nora. She asked, "Is this about the auction parcels?" Nora said, "One of them." Elena picked up the photocopied 1956 map. She held it for a moment. She set it back down. She said, "What are you looking for, exactly?" Nora said, "I already found it." Elena nodded once and went back down the hallway. She did not push. She had learned that Nora did not explain things until she was certain, and she was not certain yet. Over the next 4 months, Nora got certain. She went back to the library 6 more times. She cross-referenced the 1956 corridor map against the current county parcel database on the library's computer. She found the corridor that ran along the southern edge of a large undeveloped block in eastern Caldwell County. She found that block listed in the county register under 3 different LLC names, all filed within the past 8 months. She knew what an LLC assembly looked like. Victor had explained it to her once. The way developers bought land quietly through shell companies so the sellers wouldn't connect the purchases and raise their prices. Someone was assembling the Eastern Bloc. She noted each LLC name in her notebook. She noted the filing dates. She noted the acreage, 38 acres in October, 12 acres in January, another 9 acres in March. Together, roughly 40 acres. One corridor ran directly through the southern edge of that 40 acres. She had already mowed the strip twice by then. For months later, Braden called. No visit, just a call. The number had gone up. $310,000. He said it quickly, like speed might change what it meant. Nora said no before he finished the sentence. She heard him exhale. She said, "Tell Mr. Wolf I'm still here." She hung up. She went to the kitchen table, opened the notebook, and wrote the date, the amount, and one word. No. She was 16 now. She put the notebook in the kitchen drawer, next to the envelope of tax receipts, and went outside to mow the strip for the spring. There was a memory from 3 years earlier that Nora carried without thinking about much. She had been 13, before the auction, before the library, before any of this, and her cousin Layla had driven out from the city to visit. Layla was a property attorney. She had brought a thick paperback about real estate law as a joke birthday present, because she knew Nora read everything. Nora had read it. Layla had laughed and asked, "Do you actually understand any of this?" Nora had said, "Easements run with the land. That part makes sense." Layla had stopped laughing. That memory came back to Nora sometimes on the porch, watching the strip of land that Harrison Wolf had given her as a joke. She filed it away. Layla would matter later. On a Thursday morning in April, the phone rang at 7:18 a.m. Nora was at the kitchen table. Cough. The hearing officer looked at the 3 documents for 40 seconds. He ruled in under a minute. Braden reached for his phone before he stood up. Layla called Nora from the courthouse parking lot. She said, "Done. They want to negotiate terms." Nora said, "I know what I want." She had written it down 2 years ago in the brown notebook, on a page she had not shown anyone. The meeting at the county clerk's office took 1 hour and 11 minutes. Nora sat across from Braden and one of the associates. Layla sat next to Nora and said almost nothing. Nora was not selling. She had said that so many times it didn't need saying again. She was granting a permanent access easement, the right for Wolf Development Group to use the 12-foot corridor as road access to their site. Non-exclusive. Non-transferable without Nora's written consent. In exchange, $3,400 per month, paid to Nora Vass and transferable to her heirs. Adjusted for inflation every 5 years. Recorded against the deed. Permanent. Braden pushed back once. He said the monthly structure was unusual. Nora said, "It's what I want." He pushed back a second time on the inflation adjustment. Layla said, "It's standard language. We're not moving on it." Braden looked at his associate. His associate looked at the table. Braden picked up a pen and signed. 2 days later, Nora returned to the county clerk's office to file the recorded easement. Dwight was at the front desk. He stamped the document. He looked at the name on the filing. He looked up. He remembered the auction. He remembered the laughter. He did not say so. Nora thanked him and walked out. She sat in the truck in the parking lot. She opened the brown notebook to the last written page. She wrote the date, the instrument number, and one line. Recorded. $3,400 a month. Permanent. She closed the notebook. 3 weeks later, Harrison Wolf read a brief notice in the Caldwell County Register about the recorded easement agreement. His assistant had flagged it. He read it once. He did not comment. He had no comment to make. The 4 locals from the auction gymnasium had dispersed into their regular lives years ago. One of them still stopped by the county clerk's office sometimes on Fridays, for nothing in particular. He saw Nora's filing notice on the public board. He stood at the board for a moment. He was quiet for a long time. Elena was home when Nora got back. She did not ask how it went. She looked at Nora's face and turned to the stove. She put the kettle on. That was all. Harrison Wolf once laughed at a 13-year-old girl and handed her a piece of paper he was certain was worthless. Nora Vass kept the receipt. Would you have taken the $310,000, or held it for $3,400 a month every month, for the rest of your life? Drop your answer below, and if the story made you rethink what patience actually looks like, you already know where the subscribe button is.